Hello and welcome back to our Gencon stream. This morning we're going to be going over all of our line of sight and lighting effects, as well as token lights and token vision and all of those good things. We're going to be setting up our scene today that we created yesterday. I hope everyone has their coffee and is ready to go. I certainly do. And hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So we're going to jump right into this. Without further ado, we've got a lot to cover today, and hopefully we get it all in. As always, if there's something that I do, or if you guys have any questions, please throw it into the chat, and I'll do my best to explain everything that we can here. Great. Awesome. So here's our wonderful scene that we made. We did a nice little rivers or lake's edge here, some sort of body of water, whatever it might be. Could be a river, a lake, or whatever. But we're going to jump right in and start doing all of our line of sight. And we're going to set this up in a particular type of way here. One of the reasons why we set these up in our little folders is so that we can hide things very easily. So we want to include all of the line of sight that is also dedicated to these particular layers and groupings. That way, when we hide them, if you hide a layer that has line of sight attached to it, then it will also hide all of that line of sight. So as we go through our little creation here, as we get rid of our roof, we want to make sure that all of our roof elements disappear along with that. And we also want to make sure that when we do the same thing with our first floor, all of those elements disappear, and so on and so forth. So probably the best way that we can do this is we can work from the bottom up. It might be the best way to kind of introduce this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn on all of these features, and we'll be toggling back and forth between our player vision preview. What this does is it allows us to see it as the players will see it. One of the things that we have as the GM, I'm actually currently hosting this game, so therefore I'm the GM. When I turn these features on, you can see that this is a little bit grayed out. But it is not completely dark, right? We can still see some of it. If I turn this on, you're going to see everything just goes black, this is what the players would see without any sort of lighting in here whatsoever. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our lighting system, and we're going to turn on some ambient light here. We have some presets. So in our presets, we could set it up as normal sunlight, as you can see here. And this is going to bring everything back into focus. And if we turn this off, you can see that we have very little change in what we can see. So this is what the players would see without any sort of intervention from line of sight or any of the other kind of factors that are going to be going into this. Now we can change this in this particular setting area here. We can change the direction of our light, whether it's going to cast shadows and all of this. The line of sight features and the lighting features kind of go in tandem together. They work hand in hand. And what they actually do is we can set up light systems so that they will actually cast shadows for us from all of the different elements. And it's going to change depending on the type of occluders that we use in our line of sight area over here. So our first step is going to be setting this up, and we can actually change all of these parameters in our ambient light kind of area here. Like we can make it dusk or moonlight. We can do it dawn, for example. But for right now, we're going to keep it at sunlight. And we can actually change these colors as well. I can make this any sort of color that I wish. So we have a lot of interactions here. We also have, I'm going to hit cancel on that. We also have the ambient shadow colors as well that we can change. So once we start to put down some of our line of sight, you'll see how all of this kind of works together here. Now with this setup, we're going to be going in here. I'm actually going to be doing, I'll show you guys this really quickly. Let's turn off these two groupings here and go right into our basement. And in our line of sight area over here in our ambient, we can also add a mask to this. What this is going to allow me to do is take away any of the ambient light that's going to be inside of this particular area here. Now we might want to also use a little bit of, I'm going to get rid of this little area here. depending if we're going to keep this or not, or fade this out when people are on the inside, we can certainly change that. And we can actually zoom in and do this a little bit more precisely if we so wish. And now you can see that we actually have none of this ambient light going on the inside of our house. And even if we open up our first floor, you can see we have the same. And this is going to be great for us. Depending on what we want to do with this lower layer here, right? We can now go into our add lighting area in here. And we don't have any sort of line of sight set up first, so we should probably do that. Now we can do that a couple of different ways, and because we've separated these out, the easiest way for us to do that is we have this basement layer, which is just this, the actual walls themselves. So we can go into our line of sight, and with wall selected, I can duplicate that as a layer. And we can just drag this and drop this right down into our same basement folder. And you can see when I hide this, it's going to remove all of that line of sight as well. Now with that initial a little bit set up, and we're going to be using this for all of our line of sight, keeping it all in this one particular layer. But with that set up, now we can go back into our lighting area over here. We can also add our lights to this particular layer as well. We don't need to have these lights shining when we're not going to be using this layer. So I'm going to go into add light. And again, we can adjust all of these colors and whatnot. And we can even do this after the fact. If we drop a little light in here, you can see we instantly illuminate the area. And now I can switch over to the select light tool. And I can move this around. I have control over the area of bright and dim light, as well as how much it fades. The fall off is actually the fade between these layers. So at 100, we have a maximum amount of fade, as you can see here. And we can even do the fall off for the dim area as well. And so let's make this a little bit smaller. I'll make this 2, and we'll make the dim area something like 5. And we can change the color of this. Maybe we'll make it a little bit on the light blue side. Or maybe we'll even make it a little bit purpley. And now we can go in and adjust our effects area in here, and we can drop down some of this a little bit as well. And I'll increase the size of this. And maybe we'll make this a bit lighter. We want to have just a small amount of ambient light down here. And now we'll go back into the line of sight area. And I'm actually going to be switching to the terrain. So a brief little demonstration of how these work and with the lighting system here. So let's go into our dynamic lighting here. And you can see that we're casting a little bit of a shadow off of these walls here, which we don't want that to happen. But if we do turn it on, we can actually change the length of the shadow that it's cast and the direction that our sun is coming in. But where we painted all of our shadows in manually, and you can kind of see, we'll do some other lights, and we'll change this. I'll show you guys how you can easily transition this from night to day and all of those kinds of situations. But with this selected, I'm going to go back into my line of sight area, and I'm just going to turn off some of these features right now so that we can have a little bit more lighting in here. We can set this up a little bit better. And I'm going to increase the lighting system that we have in here as well. I'm just going to illuminate the entire area for the moment. And then what we'll actually do is set up all of our different lines of sight here. Let's move back into our line of sight area here. And again, we're going to be using our terrain feature. So the difference between the wall and the terrain, I'm going to demonstrate right now. So a wall, let's see, for example, if I do this, a wall does not allow any sort of vision to go through it. It is a kind of abrupt interaction between the lighting system and the line of sight. Now, if I, let's just grab this and delete it. What the terrain actually does is allows to see inside of it, but not behind it. And this becomes very, very powerful when we're doing a lot of cool interactions. And I'm going to show you with this little grouping of crates right here. I'm going to switch over to the line tool here. And I'm just going to add in some line of sight to this crate here that's on top. And you can see that the way that this works is we can now see all of this information that's here, but we can't see behind the crate itself. And now I'm going to add in some more of this. I'll add in, actually, we'll start right here, and we're going to go around this crate. And normally what would happen is if I did this, you wouldn't be able to see through this crate. So I'm actually going to include this other line of sight with this particular creation as well here. And you can see what this is going to actually do. We might even want to get rid of this one. We'll change this occluder here a little bit. So this is going to interact properly and appropriately. And we can actually remove that point. We could probably even remove this point as well. So what we'll be able to do is see this crate and this one, but not behind it. But when we're on this side of it, this is going to block all of our line of sight because this is the highest crate here. And now I can go in and do the same exact kind of thing on this side. So I'm going to start right here. And again, we're going to see we're casting this little shadow here onto here. And once we grab our little buddy here, let's grab Bob. And now let's change some of these parameters here a little bit so you can kind of see how this is going to interact. I'm going to drop Bob right down into this area in here. Go back into the play mode. So when I click on Bob, you can see how this is going to work. So as Bob begins to move around, he can see only what I've allowed him to see with the crate system. Now, the really cool thing about this is, as he begins to climb up onto the crates, it no longer blocks any of that line of sight. We have a very natural kind of interaction with the way that these work. No, it all snaps. So as we look over into here, and so the question is there a way to make your line tool click to existing click spots? And yes, there is. So we have this little magnetic snap tool right here, which means that as I click into these particular areas, they will instantly kind of snap there. Yeah, you're welcome. So we have this really cool kind of interaction where the crates seem to make sense and are giving off all of the line of sight that we want to. And now we're going to do the same with some of the other elements as well. So let's go back into and make sure we click the same layer here. And I'm going to select the line tool again. And this time we can do these actual items themselves. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do exactly the same thing, except I'm going to do these all as one particular element here. So I'm just going to click around, and I'm not going to be too precise about this. I mean, you guys can get into this and do it as much as you possibly want to. And the other thing is that if Bob, for example, climbs in behind these crates, all he's going to be able to see is the crates themselves. He's not going to be able to see much from inside of this little area. And if I want to include this in some line of sight, I can determine whether or not I think that this is high enough to do so. But we can completely negate anything that we feel is non-obstructive. So again, I can do exactly the same thing here. I'm going to just click on this element. And the way that this is going to work is that it will block his line of sight as he moves around. You can see he can't see anything outside because of the walls. And as he climbs up on the stairs, they no longer block any of that line of sight. You can see everything from the stairs. Now, the one thing that I'm going to change with this is because I want him to never be able to see on this side of the stairs themselves unless he is in an appropriate position. I'm going to switch back to my wall, and I'm just going to add a little wall right here. Oops, I want to do that on the same layer as before. Make sure you have the same layer selected when you do these things. And now when we move back, no matter what, he'll never be able to see on this side of this. We'll say that there is a wall there unless he comes into this area. Yes, you can hold shift to do straight lines. So that's absolutely. So if you do hold shift while you're doing these lines, for example, let's select here. And I'll only be able to do straight lines or 45-degree angles. So we can stick to the grid very, very well. Oh, we can just fade the tree out of the basement from our tree line here. We can just hide it while they're inside. Yes, you can use the circle tool as well. So we have several different, and let's go through a couple of things. I'm actually going to add some occluders onto these bottles themselves, except I'm going to be using the shadow caster occluders. And so we'll go through some of these and use them. I'm going to demonstrate all of these different functionalities so that you guys can see them. Oh yes, you could certainly do a secret door and all kinds of things. So let's actually use the shadow caster. And you can see how this is going to interact. So the shadow caster does not interfere with the lighting system, or it only interferes with the lighting system, not the line of sight system. So a character will always be able to see through the area. I'm just going to move this over a little. And so let's add now some of these shadow caster occluders. Now our ambient lighting system here, you can see that we have, this is where we control all of our shadow lengths and whatnot. And I'm just going to do a quick little thing around here. And if you hold down Control, you can stop it from snapping. And now you can see that we have these cast shadows that come from here. And now our interaction with Bob is not going to interfere with this. You can see that they're always going to cast shadows from the light source. But when I switch back over into my light area here, you can see that my shadows that are cast from these occluders change with the lighting system. So actually, let's decrease our illumination from these, and we'll add some occluders in here first. Let's do that. Let's switch over to this particular area here, and I'm just going to make this all one conglomerate with a terrain. And we'll just go right around here. We don't need to or anything along those lines. And now I'm going to drop down my actual light here. Let's make this like 2, just a very soft kind of ambient light source. And I'm actually going to put it over here in the corner. You can see we have Bob is now in the complete darkness here. It's got we have this nice little soft ambient light, and we'll actually change the color of this. Maybe we'll do this. Well, actually, let's just keep it quite white. Maybe we'll make it just a little bit yellow. Get this kind of cool yellow ambience kind of going there. And now what we'll do is we'll actually give Bob a torch, or maybe even a candle. No, so the shadows and the way that this interacts, right? So we have a lot of different ways that these interact. And you're going to see that as we select certain options down here, we'll get is toggleable, blocks movement, and so on and so forth. But the shadow system does not need to be turned on in here in order for shadows to be cast. But each individual light themselves have its own little button, right? So this needs to have this on in order for it to cast shadows. So if I turn this off, if I just want to create an ambient light source, I can turn this off. I can also make this a darkness light so that we can actually change the system. So you can actually do like magical darkness and whatnot. And the way that the darkness interacts, and we'll go over all of that as well. You can actually do some really, really kind of cool features there. So here we have this nice little ambient source. So when Bob comes down the steps here, we can interact with all of these systems. And we can turn these on and off dependent on what's necessary. But we certainly don't have to. So as Bob comes down the stairs, he decides he's going to put on a candle here. We'll have him light up a candle. And so now we have also token vision and token lights. So we have a whole bunch of presets here. So we have a candle preset, and I can just add this to my selected token. You can see there it is. It's got a nice little ambience around him. Now with this selected and this done, I can change these colors as well. I can make this anything that I want. It's got a flicker speed, and we can also change all of these parameters just like everything else before. But maybe we'll give him something a little bit larger, maybe like a torch. But maybe it's too large for us, so we can shrink it down a little bit. And the cool thing about the way that this system interacts is that as Bob begins to walk around, you can see that his light source is going to cast shadows from all of these items. Now with this system working, and now let's create a small NPC. So we'll create an NPC, and then we'll just call him NPC. And we'll give him a token. Let's give him the classic goblin token here. And we're going to add him to the combat tracker as well. And we're going to hide him over in this corner. We'll make sure that these are visible. But with Bob selected, we can see that he cannot see this character. Even though that he is completely visible in the combat tracker, the lighting system and the line of sight system is also tied into all of these things. So Bob will have no idea that this guy is there until now he can see a corner of this. So as this is all going to be dependent on the rule system that you're using. All of these functionalities, the lighting ranges, all of that stuff is tied into the rule sets. So you don't have to worry about those whatsoever. But you can see now as he goes back into the shadow, it's no longer visible to Bob. So all of these systems are tied together. Great, so let's delete all of these tokens. And I'm going to turn this back off again so we can see kind of what we did there. You can see we have our little light in the corner here, and maybe we'll actually increase this light a little bit here. And we can turn our clouds back on. So we have these nice soft moving kind of clouds in the basement here. Maybe we'll increase the speed a little bit, like 52. Now you can see like these slow moving kind of dust elements in the basement. And we'll select our little light over here, and let's just decrease our dim a little, but increase our bright light just from the corner over here. Okay, so how is the Shadowcaster? Yes, so the Shadowcaster does not actually block line of sight. It only blocks the lighting system. So if something is in shadow, it won't be seen. But if there is some shadow that is, okay, so the way that the system works, there's a little bit of a differentiation between shadow and line of sight. But what we can kind of do here, let me demonstrate this once again so that I can make this a little bit clearer for you guys. Let's put these guys back on the map. And so here we have our lighting system. And then let's go back and let's grab Bob here. So this is what Bob can see. And here is the NPC. So our NPC is going to move out of line of sight here. And when we click on Bob, you can see that he can no longer see this NPC because he's outside of the range of this lighting that we have in the corner here. The NPC can still see Bob because Bob is inside of the lighting area. Now, this has nothing to do with the line of sight whatsoever. It's because he is in the shadow area. Now, as Bob moves out into this area, we can click on the NPC. You can see he can no longer see Bob. Neither one of them have any sort of low light vision or light sources themselves. They're both completely surrounded in darkness. And now as the NPC moves into view, you can see we can't see him. We can now see him as he comes into the lighting range here. Right, because it has to do with the actual lighting itself, right? So if I put Bob here and I put this guy here and I go into, let's grab into our line of sight here, and I have let's do Shadowcaster, and I make a little line right across here, and I go into my play mode. You can see that he can no longer see him because the lighting is obstructed. There's no lighting that's going through this area, so this guy can no longer see inside of here because of the lighting. But if I add low light vision to this guy, he will still be able to see Bob. If I go into the token area here, we have token vision. We're going to add dark vision to him. Oh, he should be able to see Bob now. Yeah, it seems to also be blocking the line of sight. You're right. That must be a bug, and I'll report that. But you can see as you once you have dark sight attached to your character, everything is in grayscale as it's supposed to be. But you can see here, it's interesting because I can see through these shadows that are cast from those shadow occluders. Perhaps the shadow occluder needs to be full. Let's investigate this really quickly. Yeah, it seems to be blocking interactions with the players as well. Great, so we have all of our line of sight set up down here. We'll just get rid of these tokens. And we can move on to the upper layer here. So we're going to turn back on our first floor. And we'll turn off our second floor down here. And we can turn our trees back on. If we turn off our basement, you can see that all of that lighting system gets changed out. Right, there's our roof. And if we want to just turn off the lighting and down below, we can just turn it off here as well. So the lighting system is independent of the layers. It'll work through all of the different layers. So if I want to keep a soft little ambient light here, but we want to do some different kind of lighting up here. So we're going to turn off our basement while we do our first floor here. So on our first floor, we're going to be creating some new lights in here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop one right in here. And we're going to make this a little bit of light coming from our fireplace. So I actually come in and change these colors, make them a little bit orange. We're going to add some flicker to it. Drop down our brightness to maybe like 2, and we can keep our dim nice and bright there. Let's make it a little bit more, maybe a little bit more yellow. Yes, you can certainly, and that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to place them right inside of here, and then I'm actually going to be using some occluders to kind of change the direction of the light. So we can have a nice round kind of light here, but we don't want all of this light outside here as well. So we're going to switch right back over to our line of sight area over here. We'll use some shadow casters here, or we can actually even use our terrain pieces. And maybe even a combination of both, because we want to have our, whoops. We want to have this be blocking some of that as well. And I think what we'll do is move some of these out a little bit. Even this up a little. And then we also have some presets here. We can do a candle. And we can do one over here. And I think what we'll actually do is make this one quite a bit larger. And you can see that all of these lights are additive. So as one adds into the other ones, it gets brighter and brighter. And I think what I'll do is I'll change the flicker on these to different amounts. And I will also set up a small ambient light in the corner over here. Whoops. And here's our ambient mask. And this is what we're going to be turning on and off in order to, we're going to put this in with our roof. Great. Oh, yes, smell vision. So now we have a whole bunch of different lighting systems, and this is all put into this particular area. So we can have this here. You can see with them all on, it will be all additive, all of the different layers. And what I'll actually do is create a new folder. We'll call this roof. And we'll drag this right down into here. And we'll put our roof in there, as well as our ambient mask. So that way when we hide our, actually we want it to be the opposite of that. We want to put it in our first floor, right? When our first floor becomes visible, I guess it doesn't turn off with the other elements, so I think we'll leave it all the way up here then. So our ambient mask is what we will turn on and off when we go through all of these different elements here. So here is our base kind of element where we want all of this done. And we can probably attach our actual roof elements inside of here as well. As you can see, we don't want to have all of this kind of stuff showing through, so which is why we have set this up so that we have all of our different folders. We want to be able to turn all of these things off when we're on the outside. And then as you come in, we want to be able to show this. This is going to be the opposite. We want to show it when these things are visible. And then as we hide particular elements, we're going to go through each of these as a series of kind of interactions here. Great. So now let's turn back our roof on, and we'll turn all of this stuff off. We'll turn off our ambient mask, and we can turn it off. And now we're going to go in and do all of our line of sight for the exterior here, all of our environment. We're going to do this in two different layers here. We're going to do one down and through here, which is going to be for all of our ground elements. So we can do a little bit with like these and any of our shrubs and whatnot that we want to make sure that we have that interaction with. And then we're going to do some on our trees layer so that we can come in and have some here as well. We can do this a whole bunch of different ways. I know you can see the dim light. It is probably a little bit too dim to see through the stream. There's a little bit of quality degradation, but yeah, it's there. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so let's go in. I'm going to actually do some cool stuff with the roof itself, which we're going to include right in here. Let's make sure we have that on. So in the same exact way, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add my occluders to this particular area here. And we're going to be adding in all of the different occluders for all of these different elements on the roof. And I'll show you guys how that all is going to interact. And so why don't we start there, actually. So let's jump over here. Again, I'm going to use the terrain. And what I'm actually going to do is I will use the rectangle. And I'm going to do a couple of different rectangles here. I'm going to do one that is like this. And I'm going to go just beyond here. And then I'm going to do another one right here. Go about the same distance. And I'll show you guys why and how this is going to work. And I'm just going to come in and clean this up a little bit. And we'll go in and add one here as well. And I'm going to drop this right in with my roof. So again, let's grab our little buddy Bob, who is helping us out here a lot. Drop him in here. Switch over to our play mode. So Bob is going to be able to see this side of the roof and not the other side. As he moves around here to the front of the house, he's going to be able to see, again, this side of the roof, but not through it. You can see how all of this is going to interact together here. But when he climbs up onto the roof, he'll be able to see the entire thing. And if you were to stand right on the top of the chimney, again, he'll be able to see all around. And we can go back into our line of sight here and close that one up. And now that will hide when we hide the roof. We can also go back into our ambient light, and if we do want to have a shadows cast, we could actually cause this to create shadows as well. We would probably set this up a little bit differently if we wanted to, but I'm not going to be actually using those. But I'll show you guys how you can set up a lot of cool shadow information throughout this. And we'll actually be setting up some line of sight over here as well, in case they ever went into the water, underneath the water. Great, so now we're going to be adding in another line of sight layer here. And we're going to be doing all of our trees at the moment. And now, depending on how we want to set this up, we can actually do the trunks themselves if we wanted to. Or we could do something a little bit different, depending on how we want all of these systems to interact together. And what I would actually probably do is the way that this tree interacts here, might change this a little bit, add this to be encompassing the tree itself, but we'll see. I guess we'll start down in this corner here. So I like to do just a small amount, and sometimes what I'll do is make these a conglomerate. Actually, let's do that. Make this a conglomerate. And then we can I don't think that we've done the I think we actually forgot to do on our first floor here. Let's turn that on. I don't think we did our walls for the first floor or the door or any of the other items. So let's jump in here and do some of this stuff first. And what I'm actually going to do is just pull out all of the wall here. And then I'm going to grab a door. I'm going to do two separate doors here. So we can open them independently of each other. And I'm doing this so that we can easily remove these elements on the inside here. And if we wanted to, we could do all the little line of sight things for these as well, but we'll keep that as it is here. Now, the cool thing about the way that the doors interact inside of this system, and let's just turn on all of these different elements. And let's grab our buddy Bob once again. And so here we have Bob. Bob cannot see inside of the building. But Bob is able to, unless I have locked the door, he can open this door. As a GM, I can hold down Shift and click on this, and you can see we get a little lock, which means that Bob is no longer able to open the door. And he cannot move through any of the walls or door occluders. Turn our roof back on here. And now what I can do is just click on Bob and see some of these things. I want to change some of these interactions over here. I found that simpler shapes oftentimes work better for these kinds of interactions, especially from the generalized kind of perspective. And now we can kind of see how these are interacting. We'll go over, I'll grab back onto these walls. We don't want to do an actual wall, we want to do terrain here. Go right around this. Again, we're going to do some nice simple kind of shapes here. Going to do these as a conglomerate here. You can do both. You can do either way, whichever makes it easier. So the question is single line or a double line. And it's completely up to your preference. Yeah, it is. And also on circumstance. You're absolutely correct. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring this out. I'm going to create a couple of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more little interactions there. Seems to have made quite a lot there. And so what I've done is included in this particular rectangle this tree. And you can kind of see why when we interact with this, we want to be able to see this tree in this entire circumstance. And we can also, if we decided to, we could just do small little elements down below. And what I do when I'm putting these together is as I move around, where we have these little interactions like this, I'll actually come in and adjust that. We don't need this one. Much kind of cleaner kind of interaction there. We don't need this one. Or this one. Yeah, so here let's do a quick little demonstration. I'll redo those walls. Let's actually go inside of our building here. We'll turn off our roof and we'll turn on our ambient area up here. And let's turn on our first floor. And have Bob go inside. And I'll show you guys some of the interactions. So here's a single line. And as Bob goes in and out, you can see that where this is a small wall, I like to show some of the interior wall and exterior wall. Right, so we're going to have some of this interaction, and I should readjust that ambient light mask as well. And here we'll even give Bob a his own light source as well. Let's give him a torch. So as he goes in and interacts with the world, you can see all of these things that normally don't have any sort of lighting. So here's a single line, and you can see that everything works great. We could even put in some windows if you guys wanted. We have window occluders as well. So what a window does is it actually blocks movement, but no vision or lighting. And then we have illusory walls, which block just lighting, but not movement. We have a pit, which this is a super fun one, and we'll add some of that here in a moment. But we have all of these different types of occluders. We have toggleable wall, which is for like secret doors. Doors, which are applicable to open and close. Terrain, which you can see through, but not on the other side. You can actually see the item into it, but not through it. And walls that block all of this. So in this particular kind of scenario, I could go do a double wall here, and I'll actually, let's double click on this and select all of it and hit delete to get rid of it. Right, so we now have no more walls on our first floor. I'll go into my wall area here, and let's do it a double line. You can kind of just see the difference. Now what you want to do with the double line is you want to close it off through here, or you'll be able to see into the wall when you walk through the walls, through the doors. I'm going to hold down Shift to just quickly kind of do this. I use the middle mouse button to pan around on the map. And I'm just going to bring it right around like this. About there. And we can move these in a moment. And then I'll bring this over here. Again, I'll hold down Shift. Make sure I go in a straight line. And we'll do a little bit of a round corner there. And then I'm going to make sure I close that off. Move these out a little bit. Remove some of these extra occluders that we don't need. Probably be another one kind of like that side. Great. So now when we switch back over here, you can see that basically with this kind of scenario, what we've done is we've created a double lined situation for our walls. And then with Bob moving on to the inside, we have very little difference between the single and the double line. As long as we've closed it off through here, we're not going to get any strange kind of interactions here. You can see that we do have a little bit there. We're probably off on our line. You can see we have a weird, which is why this has happened. Let's just get rid of this point. Can't seem to click on. Oh, maybe I have to click here. Well, let's just remove that and I'll add in a line segment here. There. Now with that done correctly, we can switch back over to our area here, and you can see that you're not going to have any sort of interaction any different than a single line. And so now there is very little difference between the double line and the single line, except for the amount of wall that you kind of see here. Perfect. I oftentimes will use a single line on something like this just because it takes a lot less time for me to implement it. And it's a little bit easier to manage. As you can see, you don't have as much interaction with the other elements. Also, if you generate your walls on their own, so here we can go back to our line of sight here. We can double click on this, select it all, and just hit delete. And I can go into this I believe it's this one is our walls. Yeah. And we can go here, and with our wall selected, we can duplicate that and instantly create those walls as well. and it's going to do a single line. And I'll just move this so that's a little bit on the inside here. So I paint out most of my walls. So I use that feature quite often. And all these duplicates in here we should remove. Don't need them. Including this one. And we'll just line this up a little bit different. And this will interact exactly the same with our environment as the double walls. Except we'll get to see a little bit more of the actual wall itself, which I tend to enjoy. Great. And now we have all of these particular elements all done up. Let's just run around and test with Bob a little bit. Make sure everything is interacting fairly well. This is a little bit too much there, so I'm actually going to come in and get rid of this little divot. As you can see, it has no bearing on the way that this interacts. And then here, I'm going to make this a little bit flatter as well. We don't need this. Probably don't need that one either. Seems we're having a slight hiccup here. My computer is stalling for a moment. So what kind of maps have you guys been creating lately? Anything cool? I would love to see some of your guys' creation. Adding shadows, I think, is my favorite part. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity as my computer's having a little bit of a hiccup here for a second. I'm going to take this opportunity to refresh my coffee and take a short break, and I'll be right back. Just give me a couple of moments, and we'll be right back at it. Hold on one second, guys. All right, and we're back there. It seems everything's all caught up and my coffee is nice and hot. We're ready to keep going. Oh yes, I've been doing these for over a year. So the comment is from YouTube is that wish that these tutorials were done about a year ago, but I've been doing these for quite some time. I do them every Saturday at usually 3 p.m. Eastern time. We run until about 6. So we make maps, and all of the maps that I create, I put on the Forge so that everything is completely accessible to you guys. And it's got all of the layer content, so you can go in and do any sort of adjustments that you want, and yeah, they're freely available. Yes, there's an image quality command, and there's also a vsync command. So here, let me show you guys briefly how this kind of functions. So there's 2 different commands that you can use to really change how much Fantasy Grounds impacts your system. One is vsync and one is image quality. So if you do a slash, there's tons of slash commands, by the way. So there is a lot that you can actually do inside, and this is all dependent on every individual client and host. So this is independent of that. This only affects your particular system at the time. So if we do slash in the little chat window over here, and we write image quality, all one word, and then we can do anywhere from 0 to 3. So 0 is the default, but if we do 3, and what you'll actually see when we zoom in here, let's grab Bob again. You can see that it changes the mask feature so that it is a lot less graphic card intensive, right? So image quality is 3. That's the lowest amount. Now let's change it to image quality 0. And now you can see it's nice and sharp here. You can also do this one. It's called vsync. And we can do it, again, we can do it between 0 and 3. 0 is the default system. And this is how much or how quickly your Fantasy Grounds will update. So it'll either do it, and so at 0 is your default system. So if your system's running at 60 frames per second, that's what it's going to be. But if you do 1, it's going to half that, and 2, and so on and so forth. So if I do 3, for example, see, and you can see my video sync rate is now at 3. You can grab, and when I move this around, you can see it's going to be a little bit choppy now, because the entire system of Fantasy Grounds is going to update only a third at what, or even less than that. It's like halved each time, I believe. And now let's go back to vsync 0. And now you can see that this is going to move nice and smooth according to my system. Hopefully that... yeah, so there's a bunch of different things that you guys can do, especially people who are running on much older systems. Those should help quite a lot. And there is a big update that's coming out. Carl has done some more tuning and adjustment to all of the lighting system, which should even be more efficient. And as I said, this is system independent. So if one of your players is having a problem, they can do set those both to 3, and they should run much smoother for them. And there's some other tweaks and whatnot, but that's going to be all dependent on individuals. These are just some kind of blanket things that you guys can do in the interim. But yeah, and depending on the system itself, there might be some individual tweaking that can be done. Yeah, you're very welcome. That's right. So great powerhouse years ago. All right, so let's continue on our journey here. We'll deselect Bob. We got a whole bunch of different stuff running here. And the next thing that we're going to do is we have all of these different elements, and you can see that we can actually toggle these on and off. So during a play session, if, for example, Bob is going to be using some sort of clairvoyance or whatever. Maybe he has some sort of sense that he can detect things around, maybe like blind sight or whatnot. We can turn these off, and then when we click back on Bob, you can see he can see right through that. These are all great things. Let's just do a couple of minor adjustments here. Let's remove that. Flatten this out a little. We don't need this one. Keeping your shapes as simple as possible definitely helps out a lot, I think. Great. So now we have this little section over here, right? And we created this really cool underground, it's all in our ground area, underwater, I mean. We could build a little cave and do some underground stuff too. That would be cool. What we can actually do is create some cool kind of environmental effects for going under the water. And we can tie that all into our underwater thing as well. So we can toggle this on and off if we want to. And so we can actually make it so that we can toggle it from outside as well, which is what we're going to do now. So we have our water surface, right? And so if somebody goes underwater, we can turn this off. We wouldn't probably want to turn it completely off. What we'd actually do is go into our water tiles and lower their opacity if we wanted to do some underwater kind of cool stuff here. And the way we would do that is just switching into our layers and going into our tint here and dropping down that opacity. See here. Then we can do like cool underwater adventure. Turn that up a little bit for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new wall layer, right? And we're going to maybe put this in with these so that we're interacting with them. We want this to be able to be toggled on and off as well. So what we're actually going to do is enter into the area here with a pit. And so the way that the pit works is players can move into it freely. They can see into it freely, but once they're inside it, they can no longer see out of it, and they can no longer move out of it without the players, without the DM's permission. But we can turn off that whether it's toggleable or not, so we can turn that off. And we can also turn off the block's movement. So we can include this whole area in here in a pit, and then you'll see as Bob goes into the water and goes underneath the water, which we can then change this. So we will want it to be toggleable because we don't want them to be on the surface and have it block vision, only when they go down. But it's also really great for cliffs and doing elevation changes. And we might do a little short demonstration of that as well. But as we go into this area here, we'll be able to do a lot of really cool kind of things with this. So let's get going here. What I'm going to do is I'll show you guys a quick little way that we can kind of start this. Well, yeah, we'll just do it with a line. This will be fun. So I'm going to do this entire area here. I'm going to go down and I'm going to hold down Shift. And I'm going to just come up to here. I'm not going to do all the way in, but then we can do a little bit along this edge. And then we'll double click it right there. And so I have it so that it doesn't block any movement, but it is toggleable. And so when we come back, you can see we have this little area out here. So here we have Bob. And you can see that it doesn't interfere with his vision whatsoever. You can see he's still got his torch going. So why don't we go in and take away his torch. And as he moves into the water here, if he's underwater, you can see that I can have it block all of that vision. So he can be underwater and all of these things. But I can open this up. So if he's on the water's surface, he's not going to have any sort of problem. But then, boom, he goes under the water. He's only going to be able to see this little environment right here. So there's no way that you can do it in this particular fashion where you can have players on separate layers. I can't show a layer to one player and another to a different player. So you would only set it up in this particular way if you're going to be keeping everybody together. If there's going to be no party split, or if you are going to be, you can actually very easily set this up in a different way. I could grab all of those elements and kind of set them over to the side, and we can definitely show that as well. Yes. Yep. But we can build it this way. For example, you can build it all in this way. Let's just turn this stuff off for a moment so that we can kind of see everything. We'll turn the lighting off as well. I can actually grab these different elements of my cottage, and where I've built them all like this, right, I can separate this out. So I can, because it's all integrated together here, I could grab my first floor, and this is going to grab everything all at once, all the things that are in this. And I can grab this and I can drag it right over to the side here, as you can see. And I can just drop it right here if I so wanted to. And then I can have just the roof over here. When players enter into the building, I could move them over into this section. And then I could have the environment or the basement right next to it. And so I could keep them on separate floors as well. So if we want to, we can certainly do that. It's not a problem whatsoever. So here, let's just drop this guy right over here. And this is going to bring all of the elements with it, right? So it's going to bring everything. I think OBS is causing my computer to have some problems. There we are. And so here we have all of this on this side, and now we can go into our ambient light mask, and we can remove this. And this is one of the great advantages of having all of these separated into these own specific groups, right? Because once we put it into a folder all by itself, now all of that is going to go together. So you can see all my lights are in the same place. All of my line of, oh, looks this one, it looks like it's on a different layer. I must have it here. Yeah, I have it on a different layer. That's why. So let's actually delete that. We'll redo that wall where it's supposed to be. And so all of this is going to move all with it, right? Now you can see we got some double doors over here too. Like I got all kinds of crazy stuff messed up. We'll redo that. Let's just redo these really quickly. This stuff takes a small amount of time. It looks like that we doubled up a couple of images there as well. Let's go into our painting layer here. We want to go into our painting layer here. We'll readjust this stuff really quickly here. And I'll grab, go back into my assets. And we are in the interior map pack 2. And I'm just going to type in door. See, here's my door. And we'll make that a little bit wider. Turn this off. And I believe it is like board. Yeah, there it is. And I think we'll make it 0.5 square here. And we'll just stamp this here. Great. Let's jump back into our line of sight here and just redo our doors very quickly. One here. Here. And then what I'll do is my wall. Seems that when my, as you can see here, this got all messed up as well. I wonder if it happened with my when my computer got a little bit funny. Now let's grab our selection tool. And we can redo that really quickly. Great. So now we can have our roof here with all of the line of sight that's attached to that, and we can leave that there. And then we can grab our basement. As you can see, here it is. And we can switch over to here, and with our basement select, we can grab that and move that right over to this side. Now we can do this and interact with this all exactly the same way. As you can see, all of this stuff, and you can see that when I moved that, I don't know if it got messed up before or just now when I moved it. But some of these interactions have gotten a little bit funky over here. But anyway, let's get back to the action here. So we can interact with this all the same way, right? We no longer need this ambient mask the way it is. So let's delete that and go into our ambient lighting. Let's turn our lighting back on. All of these things. And I will come in here and I will do my ambient mask over here. So what we'll do is we'll add a mask. We're going to hide the area, and we're going to hide these from our ambient light sources. And so as we're playing here we have Bob. We can turn that off. Once he goes into the building, what I would do as a DM, because I'll have a view like this, I'll grab Bob and holding down Shift, I can move him into the building without him seeing any of this kind of stuff. And I can move him through walls that way. And then as Bob goes down into the basement, I can do the same. In this particular type of scenario, I can have people on all of these different areas. I could have players outside of the building, inside of the building on several different floors. And all of this is accessible. Yes, if you hold Shift as you move tokens. So for example, let me reset Bob's Fog of War, his visibility, reset Fog of War, so he has no memory of any of these areas. And now I can drag him right through here, and you can see he's not going to have any memory of any of this. But he will have memory of where he just came from. So he'll be able to see this on the map, this little grayed out area. That's his memory of the area. And then here. And if this kind of scenario, you know, we could change. I'd probably simplify this as well. Easy. Yeah, it's a great little trick. So you can move them all around and through walls and all of it. Well, you can. You can just move this to any scenario you want to, right? Like so, if you want to keep this over here, right? So we can just grab the first floor once again. And if we want to, we can move this back to its original location. So I'll just turn off the these things for the moment. So you can have it set up in any way that is most convenient for you at the time. By putting all of the different elements into one layer or one folder grouping, I can now interact with this as a unit. So if I want to, I can slide this right back into position. And then I can hide all of that stuff. I can interact with it exactly the same kind of way. I can put windows in for sure. Yeah, all of that is possible. Oh yes, that's correct. Yeah, so in the combat tracker, you can always grab these elements, and so everybody. So if I were to put in a bunch of NPCs, I can grab this, and it will drag all of the hostile NPCs and put them. But it puts them in a line. So now we have our first floor, and it's all over here. Yeah. Yes. Do you guys have any other questions about that, or is there anything else that I can kind of demonstrate for you guys with the that particular element of line of sight? Next, what we're going to go through, we can actually put in some windows, and you guys can see how you can interact with that. And we could even do some secret doors, and we're going to go through all of these things. Maybe what we'll do is put in a secret door, maybe behind or over by the fireplace. Maybe there's like a secret back door, which we can place in, and we can actually do. We'll put in some windows. You see how we can set up some cool lighting situations from the windows themselves. But it's all very customizable. You have a ton of different things that you can actually do. And the way that the interaction works just allows for a plethora of different creative outlets. Yep, you can. That's exactly what it's intended to do. The pit it's great for that. We can set up a pit here if you guys want. I can show you how it would typically work. And we can go through all of that, the whole scenario there. Yes, yep, that's exactly what I would do. I would set up a particular layer, which would be the actual pit itself. We can actually create a pit and set it up that way. Maybe there's like a booby trap over to the sides of the cottage here. And we can set up a little like 4x4 pit. We can do the little graphic for it, and we can set up all the line of sight. And so what I would do is paint it all into one layer, and then I could just like reveal it once somebody has fallen into it. You can do the same thing too. One of the things that I like to do is, for example, we have a whole system of tracks. So you can have players make survival rolls and so on, and then reveal the tracks so that you could have the enemy or whatever it was that had passed through the area then shown. So you can do lots and lots of really cool kind of inventive, interactive kind of stuff with your maps. I think I have to shut down a couple of my back processes here. Hold on one moment while I do a slight adjustment here of my Alrighty, I had to shut down some programs that were running in the background, I think, and fix some adjustments to make sure that we don't have any further interruptions. Great. So we move this back, and you can see we have our roof. We got some weird elements that are going on here, but we will persevere. I should actually probably simplify this anyway while we're at it. It seems that once we set up our line of sight, we should probably keep it a little bit separate anyway. I'm just going to simplify this a little bit for my roof here. I don't want a door there. So let's do this, and I'm just going to do one of these. Great. And here's our first floor. So I'm going to rework some of the line of sight in this. We're going to add in some windows so that we can kind of do a couple of different interactions here, this is super easy to do as well. Close this up. Jump in here. And so the way that I would actually do this is interact with the windows first. So I'm just going to grab the rectangle and the little window. And then we can jump in, and maybe we'll put one here. And we can do maybe a small one in the front. And maybe one on this side. And then we'll rework all of the line of sight in here to make this a little bit more accommodating. Show you guys how this is going to interact here. Now we'll do our doors again. You can see that that's back. So I'm just going to do this. We'll do doors here. And let's just line these up so that they snap together here. And then I'll do my walls. So what I'll actually do is just go right between. And you want to do a little bit of an overhang. And this will ensure that everything lines up appropriately. And then we'll go back and remove those particular ones here. So there's all of our walls. And then holding down Shift, I'm actually going to select all of these at once. And we will remove that. Great. So there's all of our line of sight for the inside here. And we also have some lighting systems in here as well. And so we want to make sure that we going to change these up a little bit. I'll leave this one, but we'll get rid of these other ones. I'm going to do these a little bit differently. Actually, we can probably use these. We're just going to interact with them a little bit differently. So let's go back and make sure that all of these are turned back on. And we have to redo our ambient light mask to remove it from this area. We go back into here, we do hide area, and we're going to hide this area once again. I'm not going to worry about this for the moment. Well, we can do it. Let's just do it. That. Not really that important. So here we have all of our lighting systems back in here. I can now select all of these elements. And we can move these around. Usually we will have some sort of visual representation of the windows. But I'm actually going to select all of these. Well, they're too different. I'll just actually, let's delete that. We'll just delete these. So what we can actually do is add in. I'm gonna keep this time of day on, but I'm going to adjust this a little bit. And I'm going to add a mask to the time of day element here. And we're going to reveal this area. Then I'm going to hide area. All right, so let's get back into our lighting system here. And these lights that we have going on here. We have this one that is our little interaction from our wood stove. We'll keep that going, our fireplace. And then we have one window here, one here, one there. So I'm going to create 3 new lights. And this is going to be the little bit of light that's going to be coming in through the windows from the outside. Now I could also do this with the mask itself, right? So there's a couple of different ways that we can go about this, and we can always kind of go about this. With the ambient light mask, I can actually go back into this ambient light area, and I can click on Reveal Area. And then I could, for example, I could just draw in some of these ambients, but you can see we're going to have this rather rigid kind of line for this, and that's not really something that I want to do. So I'm going to create my own lighting system that's going to mimic that. So we're just going to select Add Light here. And for the most part, I'm just going to click on these areas where they are at the moment. And these are all exactly the same. And because they're all exactly the same, I can now adjust them all together. So I'm going to select them all. And I'm going to change my brightness down to maybe like 1. And my dim down to maybe 3. And now we have these nice little kind of ambient light sources that are kind of coming. And I think what we'll do is we'll get rid of this adjust colors on the inside here because we're gonna do it all with our lighting. So let's just delete that. And sometimes when you delete an effects layer, you're going to get a little bit of a bug. So all you have to do is go into any effects layer and just readjust one of the small masks, and it will fix all of that. Now let's go back into these areas here. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab these, and I want to soften up this. Maybe we'll do like 50. Maybe we'll even do like 100 on these. And now we can increase our brightness. Maybe we'll do like 2. We get these nice little ambient areas here. And this is a larger window over here. So I'm going to have this to have a little bit more. So the windows aren't letting in light because I've masked out the ambient light. So what I did was here, I created a mask. And what that does is it says that this interior area has no ambient lights. It would let light in. So if I turn off the ambient light mask and I turn on shadows, you can see that I can change the direction here. Because I have these lights on in here. Let's turn these off so you can see. So you can see though that the system is generating its own shadows here. And so that the outside light is coming in. But this isn't really going to work for us because we want the whole inside to be mostly in shadow, right? So this system is going to work good out here and whatnot. But when we turn this on, we want this to be lit in our own way, right? So we're taking control over this interior kind of area in here. So I'm going to be creating my own ambient light sources coming in from the windows. And you can see I can even set this outside. And if I put a little bit of a directional thing here, I can actually create my light source in a way that's going to have, I can have light streaming in through the window. Yep, you can actually do that. So I'm going to actually do it with a couple of different light sources where I want to have it brighter and dimmer in particular areas. So what I'll oftentimes do, and this is a really great trick, is I will set my bright to 0 and just a large dim light, as you can see. And now I have this kind of soft illumination through the entire thing here. And then what I can do is take these, and when I select them, I can actually get rid of the majority of that, right? Well, we want to make sure that we have a little bit, so we have that nice fade. But now we can start to control, and think of this as like a movie set. You know, when you go and you look at the way that the lighting is set up on a movie set and whatnot, we're going to kind of mimic that. So we can do that with colors and change the mood and all of these things. So here again, we can have a little bit of ambient light coming in from these, even though most of our directional light's coming down this way. And what I'll actually do is we can set up these to be a little bit less. We might even want to make these 0 in our there, and maybe make them like 2. So here is our front window over here. Might even make this one a little bit smaller. Maybe we'll make this one a little bit smaller too. And we can kind of place it in like here. There we go. We had to update our, some of our basement light was still showing through there. Maybe even like 3. So we have this nice little soft light here. And we can lower down this one's opacity to make it a little bit softer. Yeah, so now we have this nice little ambience over here. Let's make this one a little bit smaller as well. Excellent. Currently, we do not support directional lighting. So here, now let's check out Bob and how he interacts with the scene. So now we can see that Bob can see inside. Let's reset his fog of war so we can kind of get a true kind of representation of this. As he looks in through these windows, you can see that he can see everything that's on the inside here. But he cannot move through the window. As you can see, we have a large window over here that he can see in, but he cannot come inside. but we can still open up these doors. Oh yes, do you guys want a link to the Idea Informer? Let me grab that for you guys. There's the link to the Idea Informer. Yes, directional lights are on there as well as many other features. Great, so now you can see we have all of these cool lighting set up for the inside here. We still have our basement down here, that when you can have players in 2 different spots at once. And then we can also turn on our roof here. And when we do, we want to make sure we turn off our ambient light mask. And I would also probably turn off my first floor. I wouldn't want that to interfere with what's going on here. So yeah, let's build a little trap over here. Let's show you guys some cool little functionality of this. So there's a couple of different ways that we could go about that. And what I'll actually probably do is create a folder, and we can actually paint it right into one particular layer. I don't know as you're necessarily. I don't think that link sharing is turned on there, but I can find the one that's specific for the. Let me grab that for you guys. The shaped lights one. And if you guys ever come up with an idea that you'd like to see implemented, make sure you put it up there. Hey, Fantasy Grounds Academy. Great. So let's build us a little trap over here, and we'll use some of these other features that we have here. And what I'll actually do is create a little indentation here, make it look like a little pit. Yes, that's absolutely correct, Art Mantle. Make sure that you, because the way that we actually look at it, we actually use it quite a lot, and it gives us, we're a small team, and so to allocate the resources to a particular project, we really have to know that it's something that the community is invested in. And so when we do that, we use that as a very important kind of springboard for what we tackle first, and so on. Okay, so let's dive right into this little creation process here. So I'm going to make a new layer, and we'll call this pit. And we're going to open up our assets. And what I'll actually do is just make a little indentation here. I'm going to do this a couple of different ways, but it's a really simple kind of thing that we can kind of create. I'll just go out through the bottom here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into the 2019 art package, and I'm going to grab this background image, this dark earth one. Actually, I can probably just grab one of the tiles. I think that there's a dark one here as well. And I'm going to make this a 2 by 2. And I'm going to paint it right here. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit darker first. So let's drop down this to something like 200 across the board. Maybe even further. Yeah. And we'll paint it like right here. We got a little trap that we're going to be building on the edge here. Okay, so we have a question from YouTube. I brought up my own FG, so learning the drag and drop of all NPCs was nice to learn, but notice you have a very different layout. Also a vehicles tab. Is this something coming? No, I'm in Core RPG. So all of these buttons and everything is going to be dependent on the rule set that you're using. So I'm in the very base level Core RPG. Yes, and I'm also using the winter theme at the moment, which we have some cool little decals in the winter theme as well. So let's do, maybe we'll do, oh yeah, here we go. Nice little castle in the background. Maybe a Krampus. Yeah, let's leave it there. Great. So I'm going to just do this, and then what I'm actually going to do to change the around the edges here. Yes, Savage Worlds. So it's all going to be dependent on the rule set, and you can also, when you click on the options button, currently we have a sidebar button, and you can turn these on and off, which will populate or depopulate your sidebar. And then I'm going to go into my decorations, and I'm going to grab the same kind of grass one. I'm going to grab this little grass. And what I'm actually going to do is use this to kind of stamp out a little bit of a rough edge here. And we'll be placing this under all of our plants and whatnot. So this is actually going to go down in our environmental area here, right here. You can see we've already got a nice little pit. We have some this shadow stuff that's kind of coming around it, and it looks pretty good. And we're going to create a folder and add in the line of sight and whatnot. But let's do some spikes in there as well. So let's just move up to, we're actually going to go into our goblin camp, right? And I believe that there are some spikes in here. Yeah, we got all these nice little spikes and whatnot. We have some wooden ones and whatnot. Depends on how we want this to kind of be portrayed. Let's just grab some of these wooden spikes. I'll make these a bit smaller. Maybe we'll angle these a little bit differently. And we'll use some varieties here. And now I'm going to go in, and remember we put our shadow brush right down here. And I'm actually going to make this a bit darker. And drop down my opacity to 25. And then I'm just going to add in some little bits of shadow from the edges here. Just to add a little bit of extra oomph to this. Now we've created a nice little pit that we have over here. See how easy that is to do. And now we'll create our line of sight. I'm going to make a new line of sight wall layer. We're going to grab the pit. We're going to make sure that all of this is on. And I'm just going to grab the rectangle and I'm just going to pull this out. And then we'll drop this right down in with our pit here. Now what I can actually do is hide this pit. You can see here. And so let's see how the play interaction can be here. So what we can do is we have Bob, and he is moving around this building, investigating, and we can go boom. Oh no, you've fallen into a pit. You can see we have all of this now gets shown to the player. The player cannot move out of here. Stuck in the pit until somebody gets him out. And then we can toggle that off, and now the player is able to be removed from the pit. We can toggle it back on in case somebody decides to move back in there. But you can see how quickly and easily you can kind of add these elements into your scene. You can literally paint these in as you need them very quickly. And so I actually do have a Traps art pack that will be coming out later this year. And it's got all kinds of these all pre-made, so you can just drag one and drop it out there, and it'll have all of this line of sight all attached to it. So you can quickly just add it right to the scene in the midst of things, which should be super exciting. Do you guys have any other questions about the line of sight that we've done so far? We're going to go into and do some of the different token visions next. I'm going to show you guys how you can interact with that, and you can set up a whole bunch of different cool kind of interactions. And we can do that through the combat tracker. We can do that through the token system. We can use the effects system to add it. Yes, right? Or very unpopular with unfortunate players. Yeah, so what you'll be able to do is I have a whole bunch of pits and a whole plethora of traps, and you can just kind of like drag and drop them out onto the playing field. Oh yes. We should talk about darkness lighting first, yeah. How do you mean by player LOS smoother? I'm not exactly sure I follow you. Do you mean the edge of the shadow? Oh, that's right. Thanks, Fantasy Grounds Academy. I use the search function all the time. It greatly will speed up all of the interactions. Oh, no, there's no blurring to this currently. No, it's just a very crisp line for line of sight. Great, yeah. Let's do some. I'll unclick Bob here for a second. We'll do a darkness light out here. Turn darkness on, and we'll set this to 2. Yeah, you've been trapped by Joshua. And I'm going to drop a darkness light out here. You can see that the dim area out here. We can change this. Now, these usually won't update until they're moved. You might need to move your lighting system in order to make it update. But here you can see, now let's go back. We've created this large darkness area. And look, Bob cannot see through it either. Let's move that so you can see it. So even if I move out into this area, it also blocks all line of sight through it. And when Bob goes inside the darkness, it blocks all of his sight. He still has a little bit of memory of areas that he's been. You can see like a little bit of a ghost image out here. But inside of the darkness. And we can do this 2 players as well. So this is all movable and interactable. And we can change the size of it. And we can even, let's get rid of this. We can even add darkness lights to a token. So if we select token lights, we have a whole bunch of different elements. We even have a built-in darkness one. And so now when we switch, now that should be working. I not have him. Now it's working. Oh. There we go. So now everything is going to be in darkness because it is completely surrounding this player. Now we can change it to, well, let's just turn it off. And now we can have it a regular light source. We can remove it. We could add, let's say, let's give him a torch. And then let's turn off our ambient light source here. And now we can see that Bob now only can see his torch light. But it's still going to interact with all of the line of sight features. He's not going to be able to see around corners. And all of his interaction with the world around him is going to be limited by his vision here. And we can change the size and everything on the fly here. We just go into the token lights, and with Bob selected, we can change these parameters very, very easily. And we can also turn this on and off without having to delete it from Bob so that we can quickly do this. We can toggle off whether it casts shadows and do all exactly the same kind of interactions. Bob can even have more than one. So we could have his light on him. We could have it a candle and then several others. We can add multiple different effects to Bob all at the same time. And you can see he can remember areas that he's been. Now let's remove his, well, actually, let's leave that for right now. And let's go to token vision. And we have a couple of different token visions here. These are all presets. And all of these presets are going to be dependent on the rule set. So if you're playing in 5th edition, these ones will be specific to that, and so on and so forth. So these are going to change depending on the rule set that you have set up in. But we can also change the vision range to anything that we wish. And these are going to change as well. So this is set up right now because of our distance multiplier is 1. So it's going to be per square. But if I change this, right, I can make this 5 feet, and I can put in a prefix here, or a suffix here. So let's make it feet. And this is going to interact with all of the different systems that we have here. So when I come back to these, right, and we're going to see here 10 feet now, but let's just do the abbreviation here. And so now when we go back here, we can see it's 25 feet instead of the squares that it was before. So we can all of this interaction can be changed with the grid system. And the grid system is great because it allows us, let's just switch over to a play here. Measurement of distance. I'm holding down both mouse buttons to pull out an arrow here. Now I can also pull out squares and cones and circles, and this is all done by holding Shift, Alt, or Control. And these are movable and also adjustable. And this is going to be tied to our dice color. So one of the good things that you can do is have all of your players have separate dice colors so that you can see any sort of interaction that they have a map. All players can pull these out. And so what we can do is move all of these things around. And I'm just going to right click and remove this pointer. But this is all going to be dependent on the way that I've set up my grid. So you're going to see these values change dependent on the rule system. So I'm just going to set this back to 1 and make this empty. And so that way when we interact with this system, it's just going to be, we should just have that empty. It's just going to be based off of the number of squares that we have available to us. So now let's add in a token vision here. Add in this. It's going to be 12 squares for far and 6 for near. And we can add that vision. And you can see that what this is going to do is interact with the world in a completely different way. So he's only going to see grayscale. Oh, sure, FGA. We'll do that in just a moment. And so the request is, can you please show us how to create our own token light presets in the settings area? And we can certainly do that. So now, as I move around, I have a little bit further vision from that I had before, which is in this grayscale for my dark vision. And I have color where my lighting is. And so if I go into my token lighting now, and I remove this from Bob, you can see he's only going to be able to see in grayscale, because there's no lighting in the scene whatsoever. But maybe we'll increase the distance by which he can see things. So we'll go back to our token vision with Bob selected, and we can make this 24. And we can make this 12. And now he can see much further. I wonder what light that is. Looks like I accidentally added an additional light that should be in the cottage, first floor. So here we can walk around and we can see all of the worlds, but just in grayscale. Now let's turn back on our world light. You can see it has no bearing at this point because we have all of our world light on. And now we also have over in our effects area, you can see that we have all of these effects as well. These are all our lighting presets in addition to that, because everything can be handled from the combat tracker, as well as visions and everything. So what we can actually do in here is let's go into our lighting system and we'll turn this off again and we'll get rid of his token vision. So we'll delete that. No, I added one. Let's delete it. So a really easy way that you can also interact with this system is you can grab the, let's say a candle, for example, and I can just grab and drop this right onto Bob. And you can see here is the actual effects code that handles all of this, right? There it is. Now the candle is a preset here, and we can create our own custom presets as well. We have token lights here, and here are all of our token lights. And so let's open this up and just have a look at it here. So you can see we have the dim and the bright. We have our fall off, just like we do over in here. We have our flicker, the speed at which it flickers, because this is all changeable and interactable. So you can set up all of your presets right here. And we can also add a new preset. And we can also do it through our effects system. So we could write a new custom effect in here as well using this kind of terminology. So let's do a test light. We can pick the color that we want. So let's make it something crazy. Well, yeah, let's make it like green. And our brightness will be 2 area here. Let's do the dim 5. And let's do our fall off as 50 each. We're going to make it a pulse at a 50 speed. And we can also add in a duration and whatnot, as you can see here. And we can give it a tag, which will be a special kind of way that we could call this. And we'll make our duration, let's do it 600. And so these will actually eventually go out through rounds. And they'll do it all on their own in the effects area here. So now we've created our own little area in here. We'll just tag it as test light. And close that down. You can see now that we have it here. And we can interact with this a whole bunch of different ways, right? Now we have all of these presets here. All of these presets here for our standard lighting. All of our vision presets here. And all of our ambient lighting presets. We have all these ways that we can interact with these things here. We have another way that we can set up token lights through this particular scenario. And we can write effects using this same kind of syntax. So what we can actually do is write something along the lines of add an effect. We do capital light. And we can do something like 4. And we can use a preset if we wish to. So we could use our Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you could, and so the comment is, if you have the time and patience, you could create presets for specific spells, situations for more immersion. Yep, and you can add in all of these light effects to many, many different things. In certain rule sets, if you have an effect field in items, for example, you can actually have it so when your players equip a torch, it'll immediately enable the lighting effect on the map. So let's add this one, and we can do candle. And if you want to add a duration, we certainly can. We're going to do it exactly the same kind of syntax as we have above here. And maybe we'll do 20. Whoops. And now when we drag and drop our NPC out here, you can see that they also have a lighting effect. So we have lots and lots of ways. And as you can see, if we go through our rounds here, you're going to see that these begin to, well, this should be dropping. I'm not exactly sure why. Oh. Oh, here we have it. This is where we should place it. Let's increase it. There we go. And as we travel through these, you'll see that this is all going to be interacted with. And eventually, as this times down, as we move down through all of these cycles, if we were doing you'll see that our little goblin's light is going to go out here. And now he's in complete darkness. So you can set up tons and tons of automation. And once you have it all set up, it'll just kind of go through all of the different parameters. And we can set up exactly the same thing in our effects area here. We would just write exactly the same kind of code, right? So we would follow the same parameters here. And you can do this, let's say we want it to be 5, and then you can also set up the dim area, and if there is a flicker and so on and so forth, set up the color. You can do all of these things. And so I can do this exactly the same way. And I can just, and see, there he has it. He has this nice big torch light that he can now interact with the world with. So by default, what it will do, it'll do 5, or whatever your parameter is for a small area, for the dim, for the bright area, and then also for the dim. Okay, yeah, sure. Yep, so you can do all of that stuff. So let's do that really quickly. I'll actually, let's close this down, and I'll create a new image record. And that's a great question. So, yeah, what you guys can actually do is hard code in your line of sight to specific tiles. So let's say you make specific tiles. And let's actually go in, and I'll grab one of these. I'll grab this, and we'll oh, that's items, images I want. So let's grab this little map here, and we'll add some line of sight to it. We can even add, there's already some attached here. So I'm going to remove all of this stuff. You can see that when I dragged and dropped it, All of this was already included in this because there's an XML file that is attached to this. It has the same name as this. So let's go into all of this, and I'm just going to select all of this and delete it. And then I'm going to go into my lighting system and grab all of these, and we're going to delete these as well. And I did that just by hitting delete on the keyboard. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, let's turn off all of these things. And I'm going to attach my line of sight directly to this layer. So let's click on my walls, and we'll begin to do some of this line of sight. And I'm just going to do a small amount of this so you guys can kind of see how this is going to work here. And I'll quickly create. Now all of this information is called metadata. And this is all of the different types of information that Fantasy Grounds wants to use to remember all of this line of sight. So here we have some line of sight attached to it. And maybe we'll add a couple of lights too. And so when we come in here, we turn this stuff on. You can see we have some ambient light here. Turn that off. And maybe we'll put a couple of these outside. Great. So we have all of this that is our metadata that we've just set up here, right? Now I would probably go through and do all of this and get it all ready to go. But now I want to save all of this. So anytime I pull out that piece of information, I want to have all of this work that I've just put in added to it. All I have to do is right click and export metadata. And it's going to give me a pop-up. You guys aren't going to be able to see this because I'm just streaming my Fantasy Grounds. But now I'm going to have this pop-up that allows me to save this. I'm going to save it. And now what will actually happen is well, I may need to restart Fantasy Grounds for it to find it. But once I do, every time that I pull out that particular, nope, it didn't. I don't need to restart it. All of this information was saved. As you can see, all of that line of sight that I just added, all of the lighting that I just added is all saved in there, and now it is attached to that file. So every time that I pull that image out, it'll be all ready to go. So super easy for you guys to do. So if you create any of your own tiles or maps and whatnot, yeah, and it'll do it automatically. It'll save it directly to wherever that file came from. So if you have it in a specific folder, for example, if I go into this test folder and let's say I want to create an image record of this, and I add in this wall element to it. I save this. It's going to save this in with the rest of these elements. Correct. And you can always access your folders by clicking on this button here. And that'll bring up whatever campaign that you happen to be in, that particular folder, and you can easily navigate through there. Do you guys have any other questions, or is there anything else that I can kind of go through and help you with? Yeah, absolutely, Fancy Grounds. That was a great suggestion. I often forget about this feature because when I do it, I usually do it with a batch kind of system that's a little bit different from the back end. Yeah, I usually do it through the LOS extractor still. So we've gone through over the last couple of days, everyone who's been with us, we created a nice, cool map here. And we went in, let's turn on our stuff again. We did several layers. We set up all of our lighting. We did all of our line of sight. We went through many of the different tools that we have, all of the different functionality. And like I said, I'll make this map available on the Forge as well. It'll be with the next module that I put out. I have a few other ones that I have created. Yes, Carl added the export button recently. He did. And the way that it works, if you have a multiple event like this, like if all of these things together, you have to do the base layer. So the very first layer is where it works. You just right click and do export data, metadata. It won't work, well, I guess it will on anything that's the base layer, but it won't on, let's say, for example, these layers up here. But it's got to be something that has nothing behind it. Oh, sure. Yeah, we could do a multi-tiered elevation elements and how I set that up. Absolutely. Let's pull up a different map here. Let's do something like, ooh, let's do this one. We'll actually remove the line of sight. Let's load that up. So here we have an area that is lots of different elements involved here. So here we have this nice cliff face, and we have this area in between here. Let's go to our line of sight here. You can see I used the pit in this particular element. And then I used a wall to kind of, let's put this in a different kind of context here. Shut these down now. And I'll show you a couple of different ways that you can kind of interact with these systems in order to simulate elevation. And let's grab our buddy Bob. He can have his candle, he's fine. So here is Bob, and he cannot see what is on the top of this particular event, right? Like he can see everything that's down here. He can see the edge of the cliff, but not what's above it. And so as he begins to walk up and around, and you can make this more complex. I tend to try to make things as simple as possible. We could do this in actually several stages and interact with it lots of different ways. But then once he's up here, he can see everywhere, right? And we could even make this a little bit more believable by putting this in another pit so you can only see the edge of the cliff and not what's like down here. You can set up the very complex kind of systems. And then I have it set up so that you can drag and drop him into the opening of the cave here. Let's have Bob enter into the cave, and he's got his little candle going. And now he can see and go through, this is the cave entrance here. So let's do this from scratch, and let's change this dynamic here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click on this, and that's going to select this entire area. And I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard. And then I'll well, we can leave that. That's fine. So what we'll actually do is jump over and grab, we can do this with the pit again. And what I do is I turn off the toggleable and blocks movement. I don't need to interact with it. I'm just going to kind of set it up in the environment. And we're going to set up a couple of different layers of this. So while we're up here, we won't be able to see what's down here unless we're right at the cliff's edge. And then we can actually do a few tiers of this as they're coming up and around. So they'll see a little bit more and a little bit more as they progress. I'm just going to start in this corner, and I'll just add in all of this element into the pit that I'm going to be. And we'll bring it all the way up to here. We'll click on there. And again, I'll bring this in, and we'll do this edge here. Kind of back to where it was. Oh, I probably shouldn't put it on that layer. We should probably put it on with the other, some of the other layers here. Let's do that one more time. This is like the cave-in layer, so we don't want that to be there. This is the majority of that stuff, so we'll do it here. So again, I'm just going to start in this corner. I'm going to go right around. And I want anywhere that I want the cliff edge to be able to see anyone who's going to be up here. And so that's going to be all included into this. We don't need that one. I'm going to keep this pretty able to be seen here. And maybe I'll just move this out a little bit like that. Great. One of the cool things that we can do is we can do this in multiple different scenarios here, right? So I can do another one, and I can follow right along this. Except this one, I can move up a little bit here, right? So as I'm moving up, let's say, for example, and I might even move this down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this into with the rest of my interactions here. And now let's select maybe these two. Oh, that went crazy, huh? Let's make sure these all line up properly. And we'll move this down. Move this down. Move this in a little bit. So here we have these multiple layers, right? And this is all going to work in conjunction with each other. We can do another one from the top down. So basically the way it works is here we have Bob selected. and he's moving around. We're going to see it from the player's perspective here. As he is in this particular area, he's not only going to be able to see what's right up on the edge of this. And let's reset his fog of war too. So with this now reset, as he's moving up and around, he goes up to the next level. He can see right what's here, and then he gets up to the next level, and boom, he can see what's on top now. And he can see the entire map. So now what we're going to do is we're going to include one more. We'll include this little area down through here, but we'll exclude this. Right? We want to make sure that he can't see here. So the easiest way for us to do this, we can do it a couple of different ways, but we want to make sure that we do it in a way that it doesn't interfere with other aspects of our map, right? So we can use a couple of different interactive systems here. We can do another pit, but we want to be able to not see this, but still be able to see out a little bit further, perhaps. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah. And so the comment is picking and switching through the tools and layers is critical to getting proficient and comfortable with the map tools. Yeah. Yeah, and as you get more and more comfortable, you'll be able to create more and more advanced and more seamless kind of interactions. Absolutely. Let's see here. We can actually use well, maybe the easiest way to do this is we could encapsulate yeah, we can actually add in a terrain element to this. That we could move right along this edge. Yeah, so let's do that. So what we can do is we can create a terrain element, and we could add it right to here. Oh, we don't want to do it on a new layer. Delete that layer. We want to do it on the same layer. What I'm actually going to do is just kind of do this. Oh, not like that. Let's do that one more time. Right along this edge here. But if we want to be able to see over here, that's not the best way to do it. Maybe what we can do is, let's double click on this and delete it. Maybe the best way to do it would just be with a toggleable wall. And we can hide this area. I think my mouse is starting to wear out. Yeah, I would probably do something like that. Oh no, because that's going to block over here as well. We want to be able to block out a particular element. So what we'd have to do is actually, yeah, we'll have to bring it down. I'll have to think about this. I'm not exactly sure how I would handle this. But for now, this is still a pretty functional kind of scenario here. Where as we move up, we go up in stages. and then we break free of all of our bounds of vision blocking. We have to change this a little bit so that that doesn't block. So while we're here, we want to be able to see that. So what I'd probably do is bring this down. Probably be more something like this. And you could actually do this in several different layers, right? Like you could do another one here and so on and so forth. Yeah, that interacts pretty well. Yes, it toggles them off, on and off for the players. So the way that a toggleable wall works, right? It's basically for secret doors. So we could create a little structure in here. Let's do one. Let's say, for example, we have a little element like this. And in play, the player is not going to be able to see this. Only the GM will. So as the player begins to move around, it's going to block all vision and movement. See, I cannot drag through it. But I can turn it off, and then it's completely accessible. All right. Do you guys have any other questions, or is there anything else that I can explain further for you guys? One of the cool things that you actually do with Windows, if you want to turn off the toggleable nature of it, is you can kind of create invisible barriers that players are unable to go through. So if you want to have an area like this, let's say I want to make sure that my players cannot go into the water itself. This is not passable by the player, and so a character cannot walk through that any further. So this is impassable now, unless I hold down Shift, and then I can move as the GM through that particular area. So you can make kind of like these invisible barriers that no one can go through. Which is another great trick, especially if you have like bridges and whatnot, and you have or line of sight areas that you don't want to go through. And you can also use all of these systems as well for your handouts, which is another great little tool that you can do. So if we go into our assets, let's see if I have, probably in some of these. We'll do one quick little thing as we have about 5 minutes left here. I'll grab one of these little things that we can use as a handout. Oh, let's do this one. So here we have this little city scene of a particular area, but maybe we want to enhance this a little bit with some of these built-in features. I believe there should be on the wiki. There should be all of the shortcuts and whatnot, I believe. So we can add all of our lighting features and everything to this particular area and add a whole lot of different stuff to it. So don't think that you're strictly able to use this stuff only in map kind of scenarios. There we have a really simple kind of scene here. Let's turn on our lighting and we'll see it as the players do. We might even use some line of sight here. And now I can go into my lighting system and I can actually begin to build up some really cool kind of ambience here. Again, I'm going to make this, well, let's make it 100. Let's make this nice and gradual. And we'll make this like 6. And we might make a couple of other lights around. One of the things that I really like to do is to add in lots of different elements. And we might even want to add in an effects layer. Okay, let's do time of day. Or maybe we'll actually do a color adjust. Yeah, I agree completely. And we might even want to add in a couple of other lights. And what we can actually start to do here is create some narrative kind of elements, right? Maybe we'll make this one a bit bigger. We could actually put these on street lights and whatnot. We can change this one to be a little bit more like the sun coming through here. Change its color up a little bit. We could add some more effects layers. Maybe we want it to be snowing. I think what we'll do is we'll add one more light, but we'll do a large ambient one. So you can make these kind of glows from the city. And then what I'll do is I'll actually grab these ones and we'll lower down their opacity a little. Make them a little less. And then when we actually have our little handouts here, we can even use line of sight to corral some of the elements, right? So what I'll actually do in some instances is I might even come in and set up some of these edges and really get like crazy with certain things. We might even want to do another effects layer, something like ocean, and I'll add a mask to it. And then we can do, you could do like, oh, you can actually use this to do, if you wanted to do it so it's like looking out of a window and you can see like the rain kind of coming down. But I actually oftentimes will use this on like fire and whatnot to give lots of different kind of cool things. So all of these tools are super helpful in all of these different areas. You can do lots and lots of really fun and inventive kind of things. So basically we've turned all of this, and turn all of this stuff off. From a typical kind of handout, which is fine in its own right. But we can turn all of these elements back on, and now we have this like cool, very atmospheric environment here. Yeah, yeah, all of that stuff. I love adding in lots and lots of different elements like this. Maybe bring this down to like 55, make it nice and slow. We'll drop this down underneath our snow. And I will create a mask. So much fun. And we should probably add in a mask for our snow. Doesn't that just seem so much more engaging? I think it does. We have our own little snow globe, everyone. Whoa, it's noon already? Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I've had such a wonderful time. And I actually, what I like to do is put in my email address. So if you guys are ever making maps, or if you ever run into some sort of problem, or if you just want to show off some of the stuff that you've done, feel free to send me an email anytime. I try my best. I get overwhelmed sometimes. I have a lot of work to do. So if you don't hear back from me right away, it's not because I didn't read it or didn't have any sort of interaction with it. It's just that I get a little bit busy. But I try to, the best of my ability, try to maintain all of that. But if you guys do run into any problems, or if you do need help with a map or anything, I'm more than happy to help you guys. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm here every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and I run till about 6, so about 3 hours every single Saturday. Well, most Saturdays. Sometimes I have other obligations, but you guys are all more than welcome to show up. We do tons of different stuff. This next Saturday, we're actually going to be working on using the new art packs that are coming out this month, which are these ones. Coastal, 2 coastal art packs. So this is going to be great. It's another one for creating like coastlines. I think I actually have my map that I test map that I created with it. So lots of cool stuff, ships, and all of the different parts to build your own ships, and really cool kind of coastal communities. So lots of fun stuff. So we'll be using this in the next one and building some maps. And as I said, everything that I create, I put up on the Forge, which you guys can get for free. Oh, hey, J-Rock. So all of that is coming your guys' way. If you have the art subscription, which is $5 a month or $50 a year, you get access to everything that we have released, all of our official Fantasy Grounds art products, as well as everything that's going to be coming out. And so I put out at least usually 2 to 3 products every month. So it is a great deal. Also, everything is for sale on the Fantasy Grounds store. So everything. So thank you guys again so much. Oh, hey, DJ Break Time. And this is all of these videos are going to be up and able to be accessed after the fact. So you guys are more than welcome to check them out again if there's something you missed. But otherwise, we'll see you back here on Saturday, hopefully. It is. It's up there, J-Rock. I believe it's in, I can actually find, let me grab it for you real quick before I leave. I'll get you the link to it. Let me grab this for you. There it is. That will take you right to the one with the crashed spaceship that we made. Great, guys. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully you have a wonderful rest of the day. And as I said, hopefully we'll see you guys all next Saturday. Thanks so much, everybody, and take care all.